Welcome back everyone to the weekly mailbox. Before we get started, I just want to mention it's that time of year, hay fever season. Fingers crossed there's no sneezing, but if I'm a little bit more nasally than normal, apologies. It's getting me bad this time of year. It really does. But as always, if you're new to the weekly mailbox, 5 questions from you, the viewers at home. YouTube comments, Twitter, Instagram is how you can send your questions for next week's episode. But we've got 5 bangers, starting off with Alex_7348, the Return of the King is what I've called this question. Alex asks, is Pastor Maldonado a good option for Formula E? He's always been a really fast driver in street circuits, and I think his racing style is very suitable for this championship. Thank you, Alex, for your question. And I wonder whether, after my boy Josh Ravel put out a video a couple of weeks ago, what happened to Pastor Maldonado. The last couple of weeks I've had more than my fair share of Maldonado questions, and we did our Hamilton special last time out, so I didn't really think it was right to put in a Maldonado question. But this week, let's start off with the juicy one. Let's go straight in for it. And a lot of you were asking about Formula 1. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to title this video as of yet, but it's going to have to be Maldonado based. And yeah, loads of people were saying, should he come back to Formula 1? Should Williams take him on? Thanks to that sponsorship money he had with PDVSA. I think it was PDVSA or just PVSA. Anyway, he had a big sponsor from Venezuela, and that's one of the big reasons he moved to Lotus. And Maldonado, bless him, had such an up and down career. On his day was so quick, was one of the better drivers in qualifying. It's such a shame though, he couldn't often see the checkered flag in the race. And though his time at Williams, especially 2012, was very impressive on occasion, certainly there were moments that left to be desired, I think it's a good way of putting it. But at Lotus, being a Lotus fanboy at the time, it was difficult seeing him in that car. More often than not, crashing out of races, and if you guys think Grosjean likes to crash, goodness me, was Pastor on another level. And probably the money he brought to the team with the sponsors, he probably just took away, thanks to the amount of incidents he had, bless him. And even on that weekend in Spa, where Grosjean got a podium in 2015, Maldonado retired from that Grand Prix because he cut the corner at Radion at the top of the hill and broke the floor. Incidents like that, ugh. Right, the speed was there though, on occasion, it was there. And I picked Alex's question, firstly because I think the Formula E spin on it is quite unique. And also he mentioned his driving style. And actually, I think for a circuit like Formula E, you've got to be very good at qualifying and you've got to be able to defend. 2 things that Pastor was pretty strong at. The only issue, though, is there's a much higher risk of ending in the barriers of a Formula E car. So if a team were to take the gamble, they'd have to bear that in mind. He is getting on a bit now. Is Pastor Maldonado. He's no longer a spring chicken like he was in Formula 1. And he didn't join Formula 1 until his mid-20s. He's also been out of single-seater racing since he left Formula 1 in 2015. But then I suppose you could argue Robert Kubica had been out of Formula 1 since 2010 and out of single-seater racing since 2010. Though he'd had a couple of test sessions with Renault and a season of development with Williams, he'd still not raced for a very long time. Do I see Pastor going back to Formula 1? No. Even for a team like Williams that may need the money, I think it's too big of a risk to bring back a driver like Maldonado with the history he had in Formula 1. For Formula E, I think the calibre of driver over the last couple of years has been getting better and better and better. And I look at teams that have seats available over the next couple of years. I mean, Audi, after the Daniel Abt saga, is going to have a seat. I think Porsche will most likely have a seat at the end of the season. I'm not too sure about the abilities of Neil Gianni. And they're the real top seats. Maybe more into that midfield to the back of the pack, your Dragons, your Neos. Maybe Neo is a kind of team that would take on a Pastor Maldonado, but they've already got a pay driver, if you will, in Marc Inquart, and they've also got a very talented driver in Oliver Turvey, so I don't see them getting rid of any drivers either. So, sadly for you Pastor fans, Though I'd love to see him back in the sense that he's such a meme god in the world of motorsport. It'd be such a laugh. From a sensible side of things, which is something I'm not very good at, is looking at the sensible side of things. With my normal head on, it's probably a risk too far, and he's probably a little too old now, you could argue. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'd also love to know why you're all so interested in Maldonado at the moment. I think Josh Ravel has done very, very well in convincing you lot that Maldonado is an absolute god. Moving on to question number 2, comes from Gurgley's Technic Models. This dude smashes out the best questions, but I can never get the name right. But I suppose there's nothing new there, is it? Oh dear. Great question though. Could Williams attract a top driver once they are bought out or have a new sponsor? Or will they go down the route of Racing Point? And this is one which I can't really give a definitive answer, and it's more a speculative kind of question, which some people don't like, but I love these kind of things because there's so many different avenues Williams could go down. They could be completely bought out. A lot of people, kind of like myself, I'd like to see a manufacturer really just go for a Formula 1 project, which will be difficult as most of them are going to Formula E, like we just spoke about. In a dream scenario, I would love to see BMW have another go with Williams, though that relationship was quite soured by the end of their time together in, 2004, 2005? The last year of that Williams-BMW partnership. Though it didn't end on a good note, the reason it didn't was because BMW wanted to buy Williams, and Williams weren't happy to do that. Even if another manufacturer, Audi, are now out of DTM, they're also in Formula E, but they may consider coming to Formula 1. I just want to see that Williams name stay in Formula 1. But if a big manufacturer comes along, I think, yeah, certainly it would be a really interesting project for a driver like Sebastian Vettel, who's out of contract at Ferrari or doesn't want to re-sign a contract at Ferrari. Even for someone like Lewis Hamilton, if he's coming to the end of his time at Mercedes, has won 8 or 9 championships, and hey look, he's BMW Williams. Maybe I want to spend a couple of years there and take the Williams name back to the top. You could argue also, they've already got a superstar driver in the making in George Russell. But I know what you mean. That top talent, what would Williams need to do to entice a driver like Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc, Vettel? And I think, though having a new sponsor would be great, I think the Racing Point route, where Lance Stroll and Lawrence Stroll have come on board with the team, not only have they bought a lot of money, but now by bringing on Aston Martin, that's such a whole new perspective the team is going to have, and the impact it's going to have on Formula 1 and the motor racing world in general. And if Williams can do a similar kind of thing, but I think also keeping the name, as that will be an enticing project to take a team like Williams back to the top, but with manufacturer backing, I think that's the next step they need. But first things first, they need to score some points on a more regular basis. Then I think drivers like your Verstappens, Hamiltons, Leclercs would ever consider it. It's going to be a mighty hill to climb. And again, this is all speculative, but they're going to need a lot of time to get into that position again. But they're a team that I think a lot of people would love to see make a huge jump forward in 2022. And fingers crossed, someone with a lot of money, with a lot of brand awareness, a lot of marketing skills, and someone who can bring on board plenty of technical boys and girls to make that team great again, is what we're all looking forward to for 2022. Question number 3 comes from Abhinav Dilip. When do you see the possibility of Formula E returning, considering Formula 1 has already announced its first 8 races of 2020, along with Formula 2 and Formula 3? That practically leaves only Formula E as the only major FIA-sanctioned single-seater event yet to announce its plans. And this is going to be a cheat answer, But I'm going to do next week a whole different video, nicely packaged with a bow on top and a ribbon, if you'd like, talking just about Formula E, when it's going to return, what our current situation is. We'll also have finished the Race at Home Championship, which is going on right now. I've had to pause it so I can record this video, and have a discussion about the future of Formula E for the rest of Season 6 and Season 7 going forward. But for this question, when do I see it returning? The difficulty is with Formula E is that it's in the city centres. It's not racing at circuits. And if you've noticed, with Formula 1, Formula 2 and Formula 3, none of the 8 races are at street circuits. Yes, there's still talk that Baku would like to hold a race later on in the year. Singapore isn't completely cancelled as of yet, but looks like it's going to be likely. And Vietnam also, though is not officially cancelled, it has been postponed, and the government aren't too energetic, shall we say, about holding a race for the rest of this year. And Formula E's biggest issue is exactly that. The only race that they go to that isn't on a street circuit is Mexico, and they've already been there this season. Also Berlin, which is something we will definitely be talking about next week, is held at an airport, an old airport, which technically isn't in the city centre, so is much more likely to host a race. And the current plans for Formula E, for those that aren't really that interested but would like to see some racing, the current plan is to do multiple races at Berlin. Maybe even up to 6. Yeah, up to 6. I'm baffled as you are. But that's the number being thrown around. And what's unique about Berlin and Formula E in general is that you can kind of just make any layout you want, especially in Berlin because it's an airport. It's like on a racing game, just a complete open field, and they just throw down the barriers themselves. So in theory, they've just got complete reign to even just try and copy circuits like Monaco. Literally just do a layout like Monaco using barriers. Yes, it's a little bit more complex than that, and working out runoff areas. But for the most part, apart from Berlin, it's going to be so hard to set up any races. And the majority of the calendar so far, London, Paris, Rome, Jakarta, have all been cancelled completely. I think it'll be a little while before we return to Formula E. And also, again, I'll talk about this more in our separate video next week, but it wouldn't surprise me if they kind of did a bit of a super season, because Season 7 is already the official years of it is 2020, 2021. So it wouldn't surprise me if they combined the two and did a giant 20 season race if possible, because we've already done 6 races, I think it is, this year. So we're 2 away from an official champion with the FIA standards. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they did a big chunky season for Formula E. And I'll leave that there. Keep your eye next week, Formula E fans, for a more in-depth video. No Name, and that's the actual name. That's not me being lazy, by the way. No Name asks, who do you think will be leading the championship at Monza? Verstappen has been very strong at Austria, and there are 2 more races there. Hamilton and Verstappen are both very good at Hungary. Then there's 2 races at Silverstone, which is Hamilton is very strong at. I really don't know. You kind of answered the question for me there, but yeah, I think the first couple of races in Austria, though Verstappen has won the last couple of years, Mercedes is still very strong. And last year, without strategy blunders, I believe it would have gone the way of Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. But again, their strategy department, yeah. We'll hold off for the memes at the moment on Ferrari's strategy. But the last 3 years has been anyone's game. Mercedes had reliability issues. I think that was Lewis Hamilton's, I want to say, last retirement from a Formula 1 Grand Prix all the way back in 2017 or 2018 that was, wasn't it? When they both retired, Hamilton and Bottas. Come on, Dan. Come on. Got to get up to my Formula 1 knowledge. It's only returning in less than a month, ladies and gents. So, Austria could be anyone's game. But I think Verstappen will be hungry for it this year. And there's talk that they might let 500 fans in to sit on the, not front row, on the starting grid of the Grand Prix. You know they're going to be Orange Army if they're allowed in, so that's something that'll probably play slightly into Verstappen's hands. And it's all going to come down to who's had the best preparation. Mercedes have been allowed by the FIA to do a few test runs with their 2018 car at Silverstone, I believe it is, before we head to Austria. So Hamilton and Bottas will have warmed up a little bit. But on the flip side, Verstappen is a driver who's pretty much not stopped racing. Though it's been in the virtual world, he's trying to keep that training up, and mentally, I think he'll be right up for the challenge. So coming out of Austria, I think Verstappen has a good chance of leading the standings. He got that first pole position of his career in Hungary last year, and again would have won if not for strategy, which on the day Mercedes were better, but it was very close between Mercedes and Red Bull. Silverstone, you're right. That is a circuit that I think will definitely play into the hands of Mercedes, and they will very much look forward to having 2 races there. But again, on the flip side, Ferrari and Sebastian Vettel were the quickest in 2018. We really don't know, because we've not gone racing at all, we don't know how good that Mercedes is, how much better it is than the Red Bull, if it is indeed better than the Red Bull. And I don't think we really saw the proper Ferrari in winter testing. I don't think they're quite as far away as people think. So at Silverstone, again, it could go anyone's way. Maybe even Vettel and Leclerc could spring a surprise. That's before we even get to Belgium, which is another circuit that has gone pretty much back and forth between Ferrari and Mercedes in the hybrid era. But also Daniel Ricciardo won for Red Bull back in 2014 in the hybrid era. And Monza, as we saw last year and the last previous years, is anyone's game as well. The calendar is so good for that exact reason. We don't have any Spains where we know Mercedes is going to be quickest. We don't have any Monacos where realistically Red Bull and Mercedes... Well, I suppose even Monaco, it's been anyone's... Look, my answer is I don't know. I just wasted so much time to say that. But I think it's important to say that though a lot of people will look at these circuits and say Austria, yeah, Hungary, yeah, Red Bull every day of the week, I don't actually think Formula One is quite that straightforward. And I think, like I just explained a second ago, all these drivers are going into this season in such a different mental shape than they have ever been before. They'll be so rusty. I think mistakes will be higher than before. And I think you will definitely notice, and there'll be a surprise of drivers who've kept up their fitness, who've tried their best to do simulator work, have tried their best to go out on a karting track. And I think for that exact reason, there'll be a hell of a lot of surprises in the start of this season. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But you all know that. I think we all just want a bit of racing, don't we? And with that, before I sound any more stupid, we'll move on to the final question. And as always, I want to know your thoughts in the comment section below. Our audience participation question comes from Jack and simply asks, what's your favourite one-off or testing livery in Formula One? I think this is because on my community post where I put out this question, I put up this beauty of a livery. 2005 Monaco Red Bull Star Wars Revenge of the Sith livery. What a god of a car. I want this as a classic car on the 20 on the F1 games. I want to see it. The 2020 F1 game, please put this Red Bull in the game. No, as a Star Wars fanboy and Formula One fanboy, this one has a special place in my heart. But I've also loved pretty much all of the Red Bull camo editions over the last couple of years, especially that first one last year. Was it last year? It was last year, wasn't it? The red version with Honda. I would have loved to have seen that go racing, but there's plenty more and I don't want to ruin it and spoil it, so I want to know yours in the comment section down below, and I will meet you there and be favouriting my favourites. And that is it for this week's weekly mailbox. Again, apologies for the hay fever, my voice is already dying and I've only done this in 2 takes, thank goodness for editing. If you want to share your question for next week's episode, in the comments down below, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. I hope you're all keeping well, keeping safe. If you're new around here, feel free to subscribe. But thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.